to Bloody Good Horror.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Bloody Good Horror. My name's Eric, and I'll be your host for this evening, where we will be reviewing National Lampoon's Class Reunion. It's like a reunion.
Did it!
It's like a reunion of Class. Joining me first up tonight, please welcome John to the show.
Hi, Eric.
Still
Threw
not,
me a curveball on that one.
Still not living in New York City. Next up on the show, please welcome Joe.
Mios, chicas. How are we doing tonight?
And last up tonight from Indiana, please welcome Casey.
This movie is my fault.
From Indiana, the latest coronavirus hotspot. Everybody give Casey a round of applause. Yay.
Right.
We made it.
Tyson.
See, Eric, there is more than corn silos in Indiana.
Yes.
There's also coronavirus.
Now there's the
We're gonna
COVID.
cure that shit with the power of prayer.
Welcome to the hotspot zone, Casey. It's not fun.
Yeah. Are you guys excited that Michigan is making you guys look like slightly saner now with all their fucking nutbags up there?
Yeah, no kidding.
Good times. We had people protesting at the Capitol, and there was a protest in front of the governor's house the other day, which seems classy.
I'm just shocked they didn't try to throw more tea into the Boston Harbor. You know?
John, you're assuming that these people doing this have even a cursory knowledge of history.
I mean, they came up with Tea Party. They might not have known what it was about.
They don't know what that means. It's fine. Tonight, guys, we are here to talk about something of a throwback. It's a movie I'd never heard of. This was Casey's staff pick, National Lampoon Class Reunion. Senior trip, the low-key secret best National Lampoon's movie. We can talk about that later. We probably get a little bit of National Lampoon's history, because it occurs to me if you're like 25 years old, you probably have zero context as to like what any of this crap is. So we'll probably talk about that in a little bit.
They're still making movies, aren't they?
Not very good ones.
Not ones anymore.
Yeah,
Not ones.
It's all like direct to video.
It's not.
They peaked at like Van Wilder, I think.
Yeah.
peaked.
Not peaked. I think that was like
the death rattle.
I would call that their last like watchable thing. Yeah. Like
that is fair.
it was also. I mean, it was also probably the last like high profile thing, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll
Should
get to
we
that.
also mention we're recording on Cinco de Mayo, so when Joe starts using weird accents, people aren't horribly offended.
I mean, John, that's not like a holiday type occurrence. Like it happens, on random days too. But yeah, I am currently quattro margaritas deep, so
Oh shit.
I'm pretty fired up.
What's your ruling on that vis-a-vis being able to drive to soccer practice?
No, I would say right now, driving would not be advisable.
Well, Joe, if you want to know how my quarantining is going, I'm drinking vodka on a Tuesday.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, what's the difference? Like
It's
Saturday
good- yeah,
night,
for real.
we went to bed early, and normally we'd be bummed that like we missed our Saturday night fun night. We're like, let's just do it fucking Sunday. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
My commute is 15 seconds to walk down the stairs. So
Yeah, and if I look like hot garbage, like who gives a shit as long as I'm getting the job done, right?
exactly.
I think this past week is the first time I've been to bed at 10:30 on a Saturday in probably a decade.
Wow.
Easy.
Well, Joe, speaking of depression drinking, what are we drinking tonight?
Beer guts.
I love the point. National Lampoon's Class Reunion, or whatever the hell we're calling this thing. A fine little ditty about a reunion of people who went to class together. And in honor of classes, or lack thereof at this current state and time, I picked a beer from the good folks at 25 West Brewing Company. That's here in Bloomington, I think. Bloomingdale, sorry, Illinois. not far from where I live. The beer I picked from them is the What I Did on My Summer Vacation, which is something you'd probably have to write a little story about when you get back from your summer break in high school. It is what the kids are calling a New England IPA or a hazy IPA. I've done a handful of these. I think I did one a couple weeks ago. So I don't need to get like super deep into it, but it's it's a smooth, drinkable IPA. A lot of hops in there, but not like super overpowering to the point of where it's like blowing out your taste buds and you can't enjoy yourself or potentially your lover or whatever else you're trying to taste. This one I really enjoy. You get like a lot of like mango and passion fruit in there too. Obviously with like kind of the hot bite at the end, but like not super overpowering. So I'm a big fan of 25 West and everything they do and this style in general. Comes in at about 6.3% alcohol, so not like super high, but enough to get you going if you're trying to do that sort of thing. So I wholeheartly recommend everything that they do. 25westbrewing.com is their website, I believe. There you go.
Joe, I have a gluten free recommendation for my gluties out there. That's what you
Yeah,
call them,
buddy,
right?
go for it.
Is it just straight vodka?
Well, also recommended, yes. Woodchuck Cider makes a drink called Pear Secco that I bought specifically for the last drive-in last week. We'll talk about that in the show later, of course, because now we do it every week. It's delightful. It's like a really perfectly dry, light, like little fizzy bubbles, little pear cider. Only 10 grams of sugar, too.
Is it sweet? Like my problem with ciders, I don't like when they're sweet. I
No,
like the dry
it's
ones, like you seem to
It's
also.
dry, but it's like just the right amount of sweetness that you want. So
Well,
it's not like too weird.
Because pear is usually a little less sweet than apple. I
Yeah,
feel like.
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm drinking. I didn't even realize this when I pulled it out of the fridge. But have you all seen this? It is it's a New Belgium IPA that's just called the 1985 IPA. I don't know if you can see this can art. It's pretty good. It's their Voodoo Ranger IPA, but then it just has like 80s can art on it. It's unclear to me what makes it 1985, but relevant for this movie.
Very
I
nice.
think that one's fairly new.
It was the first time I'd seen it. I picked up the 6-pack last weekend, so
Good
yeah.
times. Well,
Delish.
guys, it is time. Let's take a quick break and discuss National Lampoon's Class Reunion.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. From the prime time. Main feature.
John Schnars.
Eric.
Even though this is Casey's staff pick, I feel like maybe this is your show in a way, because what I know of National Lampoons is that it was largely started by like Ivy League white dudes, right? Isn't that-
Well, it was at Harvard, was
Oh.
the Lampoon magazine or whatever, and
Yeah.
then I actually don't know a ton about the background of like how it migrated from Harvard to then becoming this National Lampoon's franchise, which
So-
was a standalone magazine.
What you're telling me is when I asked you to look it up today, you did not.
No, definitely did not. So
Maybe Casey
here
wants
we
to
are.
Google it while you're talking.
But that's okay though, because I can tell you if you want to learn more about National Lampoons and the history, there's a great documentary, and I think it's on Netflix. I'm not 100% on that, but it's called Drunk, Stoned, and Brilliant Dead, or Drunk, Stoned, Brilliant Dead, and it is the history of National Lampoons, and they actually go into a good amount of depth on how the magazine started and how a lot of the key people from National Lampoons and that magazine had moved over into starting making movies in Hollywood and stuff, and how that carried on as well. So it's actually really interesting. It goes in a lot in depth with Doug Kenny, who is like leading the charge for a lot of that stuff. And they talk about how they met up with Ivan Reitman, all sorts of people. It's really great.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
I
Casey-
read a little bit
thank-
about this movie specifically.
thank
but
you
yeah.
thank you for doing John's job, Casey. I appreciate it.
There's that movie on Netflix too. I think it was a Netflix movie with what's his name from the movie we watched last week, Bill Hader.
Yes.
No, the other guy.
No, Will Arnett.
Will
No.
Forte.
Will Forte.
Forte.
God.
Forte.
Yes,
Is it?
there is another movie with Will Forte. It's about the history of National Lampoons, where he plays Doug Kenny, who is the main
Yeah.
person behind that, and it's got a lot of really big famous people. It's got Joel McHale playing Chevy Chase, a lot of modern actors or comedians out there playing these people that you're familiar with over the years if you've watched a lot of National Lampoon's movie. It's a decent one too.
Yeah.
It's got a pretty similar name to Drunk, Stupid, Brilliant, Stoned, or whatever it was.
Very interesting.
Again, they got Will Forte. Like I don't know how they.
I
did it.
know.
Okay,
Got
Joe.
him.
John, let's hope you did the other half of your job today. John, please bring us the word of the day.
Eric, today's word, mingle.
Mm.
Mingle. Mingle. Mix or cause to mix together. It can also mean move freely around a place or at a social function associating with others. Mingle comes to us from the Middle English mang. Mang. I assume my Middle English pronunciations are very good because I speak regular English. So.
Mang was a wrestler in the 90s, I think.
There you go. I think that's where he got his name. He was tipping into the Middle English. There's also a Middle Dutch word, mengelen. But mang was to mix or blend. So there you go. Mingle.
Mingle.
It's what you do at a reunion. For anyone who hasn't,
So John, speaking of reunions, when I asked you to look up some info about this movie today, what did you find?
Yeah, I mean the thing that was that kind of blew my mind a little bit. So this was John Hughes's first produced documentary.
It's not a documentary.
Definitely.
I know.
Let's hope not. If it's a
Did you think this was real, John?
Yeah. If it's a documentary, it's a documentary about rape.
Yeah, well, no, but so John Hughes he met up with or knew some of these guys from National Lampoons. He was working in advertising actually in Chicago for Joe. Shit, now I wish I could remember the full story, but he was working for one of the big ones. It might have been Ogilvy actually in Chicago as a creative, and he's come up with he is credited with a couple of pretty big campaigns from back in the 80s. But he would travel to New York a lot, and he would use as an excuse, these trips to New York for work to go meet up with these National Lampoons guys. There was a guy, PJ O'Rourke, who was running National Lampoon at the time. And so he started with them as a writer and was doing some humor stuff and wrote this film. And it was his first screenplay. First produced screenplay.
Wild.
And yeah, he went on. He did.
It's
I didn't
funny.
realize
So
this
what
was
year did this come out? 83 or 82 or something?
80. So this was
83.
released in 80. Well,
Yeah.
82 is on IMDb.
You're right.
It's credited as the second National Lampoon's film.
After
After
Animal
Animal
House.
House.
It's really interesting to hear that about John Hughes, because if you think of the weird short arc of his big period, because to think that he was a nobody in 83 and by the end of the 80s is basically writing every hit teen comedy, and then by the early 90s, what's he doing now? I mean, I'm sure he was still writing stuff, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't
John. No, dude. He did. You look at his.
Or did he
IMDb
just move on?
is-
Did he just move on to other stuff?
Yeah, well, basically any John Candy movie that's big, he
Yeah,
wrote.
yeah.
So
Okay.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, right?
He
Uncle Buck,
he grew
Great
up.
Outdoors. He
ma-
directed a couple of those. He kind of evolved a little bit,
Gotcha.
but he wrote all of the vacation films too. Or his
But
credits.
he'll always be known for Breakfast Club and Sweet 16.
Weird
Candles,
Science.
Weird Science.
He did it. We honestly, the reason we moved to Chicago was because Leslie always loved those movies as a kid, and always wanted to live in the Chicago burbs because she just liked the way it looked.
No
and,
shit. I mean, the other fascinating thing is too, if
That's
you think
cool.
about the long tail of his influence, it goes beyond those movies, because when teen comedies came back in the late 90s, it was all directly influenced by John Hughes. Every cycle when
totally.
they come up, you're really just eventually going back to those Hughes movies because they were the blueprint for that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So John, I looked it up. He worked at Leo Burnett, which is the current building that I work in. So
There you go.
Let's just assume I'm actually sitting at John Hughes's desk.
No,
looking at
I was
books.
gonna go. You're the next John Hughes. Like
Yeah.
it was John Hughes, and now
Listen.
you. It's here we
Dude,
are.
it's
So-
I'm reading an article. It doesn't say anything about staffing and just ruining people's weekend. But you know, maybe let's go with that.
Yeah, Joe is the
Yeah.
John Hughes of staffing.
Yeah, of what he was to like movies and teen comedies, I am to Excel documents. Let's just we can say that.
Casey, this was your staff pick. Obviously, less stuff coming out in theaters now. We've done staff
Oh, yeah.
picks. We've done staff picks for years, but this is probably the fastest we've ever like burned through everybody. So, why did you pick this? How were you introduced to this, and what did you think of it this time?
So I've been a National Lampoon's fan for a long time, and this is one I actually did not know existed until much later, probably within the last 10 years, 15 years. My wife introduced it to me, knowing how much I like National Lampoon's. Animal House is literally like in my top 5 favorite movies ever. I really like a lot of the stuff that Vacation, Christmas Vacation's a classic. So I was pretty excited to see that and getting through it. This movie is not necessarily the greatest movie ever made. Well, no, I shouldn't say not necessarily. It's definitely not.
Don't prejudge.
I don't think,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would argue that.
Yeah, this movie's rough. It's rough around the edges. It has some dumb moments, but it also has some classic National Lampoon's moments. And if you're a big fan of those types of movies with the National Lampoons, you get to see a lot of the cast coming back that you see later that come up in big roles, like Bunny that was in Class Reunion, ends up being Cousin Eddie's wife in Vacation. You see her around a bunch, and you see a lot of the humor and the gags that they were obviously trying out here in Class Reunion coming back later in different formats, and it's fun to see that too, as far as like the history of it. And it's not, I would argue it's not the worst National Lampoon's movie either. There's a lot, especially when you get into their modern era, there's a lot worse that are out there. And this one, for when it came out, was something slightly different, and it's nice with the horror that it's not overly gory and stuff like that. For when it came out in '82, so it's just it felt unique to me. So I thought it would be fun to get you guys to watch it too. So when I heard Joe had watched it a lot growing up, I was pretty excited to see what you guys thought.
Young Joe just wanted to see them boobs.
Yeah. Was there there wasn't boobs in this.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah,
it's
no,
like one.
there's
It's like
a
one
couple.
scene that I caught anyway. Okay, Joe, what did you think of your modern viewing of this?
Yeah, so like Casey had mentioned, I had watched this a lot when I was a kid. If I remember right, this used to be it would show on TV every once in a while, and I remember my brother and I actually caught like an edited version, and there's some like goofy gags in here, and especially like I think we had recently seen The Exorcist. There's one character that's like possessed and kind of goofing on that whole thing. So we went out and rented it and watched it probably a few times. Like back in the time where like you would rent movies you had already seen, just because on a Friday night you would rent like 2 or 3 things. So I'd seen it a handful of times, but honestly probably not thought about it in 30 years. So I was pretty interested to go back and revisit it. It doesn't hold up well. There's definitely, I was thinking today, I'm like, how do we talk about this? But like, I feel bad because I don't want like to offend Casey because this was his pick. But like, I was watching, I'm like, this is pretty awful.
Pretty
that's
bad.
fair.
Like it, I don't know. It's interesting because I did some reading on it too. It was like they had made another movie and I forget what it was.
It was called Movie Madness or Movie
Yes.
Mayhem, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
But this one was released first. So to think of this as coming out right after, about 4 years after Animal House, which is like such an iconic movie and like so funny, even though it's not like so on the nose about like college life. I think the problem I have with this one is like it's so like in your face with it trying to be wacky and like so on the nose that it goes too far to the point where like it's not clever anymore, and you kind of lose a lot of that humor. It's definitely right up the alley of me when I was like 8 or 9, but going back and watching it now, it's just it falls pretty flat for me, unfortunately, which is a bummer because I was really excited to go back and watch it again, but it's just
Wait, can you explain the first? You said you watched this mostly edited previously. Do you think you had ever seen the like real version?
No, so you may have tuned out for a minute there, but
I
like
was
so
trying.
my brother and I had definitely watched it on TV, and even like I think in IMDb, one of the trivia things is like they had to edit like 30 minutes worth of the movie.
Yeah, I
Um,
saw that.
So I remember like the cuts being pretty obvious. So my brother and I went out and rented it to see like the full version, mostly because at that age you're like, oh, I want to see boobs, and they probably cut out boobs. So we watched it, and
It's true.
we didn't get much of that, but like, it's interesting because it also reminds me a lot of like Revenge of the Nerds, where as a kid I didn't get a lot of the jokes, and watching it this time I'm like, oh, I definitely wouldn't have got that when I was like 8, but like now it makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
I
It's-
haven't
it
haven't
is w-
seen
yeah.
I haven't seen the MPA ratings, but I'm gonna guess suggestive language or suggestive humor was one of them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Profuse jerk off jokes.
Zeno, what was this rated though? Because this had to have predated PG-13.
No, it was definitely R.
yeah.
If
John-
you
It had to be
had
R.
nudity, it was definitely R.
John, is profuse a word?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
It was a rated R.
Frequent. Sort of.
Not really, but I'll go with it. John, what do you think?
So I had never seen this, and I'll say I had never even heard of it when Casey mentioned it. To the point where I think maybe we talked about it on the show, but there was definitely questions to Casey of like, is this a horror movie? Like, should we be covering this on our horror podcast? This it's super weird. I don't know. Like I sort of land with Joe. I mean, watching this with no context, because it's not like I sat down and watched a trailer or anything. Like I went into this knowing basically it was a National Lampoon's movie, and that was it. It's just really, really weird. I mean, the horror elements are the things that I actually would love to talk about, because they're so just like randomly thrown in there.
Yeah.
You could have made this movie and had it not be a horror movie almost. Like,
Totally,
Oh, yeah.
100%.
So I don't know. I mean, I actually am like happy that I saw it, because it is like this weird moment in time. It's also always interesting to kind of revisit the kind of those like 80s sex comedies. So if we've never talked about it, I love the Police Academy movies.
Yeah,
that was
me-
like a
yeah,
thing.
it's big
Oh,
same.
yeah.
I fucking love the Police, and so there was like a little part of me
Although
that was like, wow, this is-
I probably love like a lot of the later ones because they're probably the ones I saw on cable more. Like I probably love the blasphemous ones. Like I love City Under Siege.
number
Yeah,
6,
City Under
Just-
Siege.
What was it, like
bad.
Mission Miami or something?
Mission Miami.
Yeah.
So Mission Miami is when that's the one where the Gutenberg was gone and it was replaced by that other dude who later played Lloyd Braun on Seinfeld. I don't know that guy's name, but that guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love
No,
basically
he
all
goes
those
by
from
Lloyd
like
Braun now. He legally changed his
my
name.
Police Academy wheelhouse is like from Mission Miami on.
See, so in any event, I had a buddy, it was the same guy. I mean, I talked about on my previous show, whose mom had taped everything off HBO. He had 1 and 2 of Police Academy.
That's
I'd probably
that's
seen it
actually
each-
a really good like parallel to this kind of comedy.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so that's what I was saying. Like, this hit a nostalgia spot for me, but like, not because like I had seen it, but because I just was like very familiar with other movies that were of its time.
The vibe.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and we'll get into it, but like, there's a character here. I can't remember his name. Flounder. I think Casey mentioned it earlier,
He
but
was Flounder in Animal House.
oh yeah. So like, but he's basically playing like the Belushi character from Animal House.
Yes.
At least that was like how I was thinking about it. But I don't know. So I did not really enjoy this. I did not think it was a great movie. But at the same time, like, I don't know. Looking back on it, I'm like, I'm glad I watched that.
Can
So,
I drop a confession right now on the show?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, please.
I've never
Ex confession.
I've never seen Animal House.
Oh, my God.
What?
I've like tried to watch it on cable and just was like, I don't get it, and so I've never finished it.
I could see like at this age, like you've kind of passed the moment where it's funny for you. So I don't fault you for
But
that.
even as a
No,
kid, like
there's
flipping
still
around, it
some
was
real
always
moments.
that was like a
Yeah.
TBS one, and I just was always
Oh
like,
yeah. No,
I was
wouldn't.
always like, I don't know.
John, you just reminded me of this. Like every time I'm at work and someone asks like where we should go for lunch if we're going out, I always say like let's go to the Blue Oyster Bar. Mahoney says it's got the best crab cakes in town.
Did you just
Nobody
say?
ever gets it.
Did you just say the breast crab cakes in town?
I did.
Um,
I did.
I was
They are that too.
So I was pretty interested to find out that this came out in '83 because it felt more to me like something that would have came out in the late 80s when you started seeing more, like the horror genre was so big, but it was sort of running its course and coming sort of down. And so you started seeing more lighter stuff, spoofs, comedies, that kind of thing to try to keep it fresh. I was kind of blown away that this came out in 83 because that would have been right in the middle of like post Friday the 13th explosion. Although
Well-
maybe that explains why some of the horror feels tacked on. Like you almost wonder if they took another script, looked at what was hot at the time, and was like, whatever, possessed lady for no reason. I don't know.
Yeah, well, they actually say in the trivia this came out around the same time as like Student Bodies, Class Reunions, Saturday the 14th,
Yeah, 83,
Wacko.
yeah.
Like pretty much there was a slew of these type of movies coming out at the same time.
I own Saturday the 14th on VHS. I used to rent it all the time as a kid. I haven't seen it in like 20 years. That would be a good
I would
staff
actually
pick,
love to go back and
It
watch
does
that
not
too.
age well either.
Oh,
I
I'm
can
sure it
tell you
doesn't.
that.
I'm sure. So anyway, I don't know. I really didn't like. I did not enjoy this movie on a pure like. So we just did. It's actually really interesting because we just did Elvira, which in some ways is kind of similar in that it's like satire almost at times to spoof levels, like where it gets that. They're very the universe is like right away it's letting you know that everything in this universe is silly and over the top. But I think the writing in Mistress of the Dark is actually way better and more nuanced. Like this is way more. This is a straight up like base. I guess it's a spoof. I don't know. I'm not a genre expert here.
Well,
John.
I don't think it's a spoof. It's a parody. Like so,
Parody,
spoof would
okay.
imply that you're like
Sending up the
doing-
tropes.
well, and like specific thing. Like that was the thing for me is like there was no specific film references really. There were. I mean, Joe mentioned The Exorcist. It's like a very tenuous link that this
Yeah.
woman who's like a possessed
but
woman
like-
in the movie.
But I think
is,
for people who haven't seen it, to understand the vibe of this movie, it's like towards the end I started kind of thinking about this. It's almost like theater acting. It's like everybody is doing like Groucho Marx silent film era like physical comedy, like the kind of movie where somebody falls in their butt and you expect to hear a French horn. Like that's the only way I can describe it. It's that silly kind of bass is a word I would use to describe a lot of the humor in this movie. It is very much in this vein of these late 70s, early 80s sex comedies, which, from a historical perspective are fascinating because they age horribly. Like, there's stuff in this movie that made me laugh. I grew up in this kind of comedy, so like I can watch this and kind of take it for what it is. I think a younger person with a different comedy sensibility might be like totally shocked by a movie like this because it's like, I mean, really the only fair word to use is rapey. Like you get into this kind of comedy, it's like every woman is like, it's real bad. Like, and that I'm not like condemning it. I'm just saying like, that was interesting for me looking back at it, at how like literally every woman, and by the end when they're doing the end montage, the only arc for every woman is that she's going to marry one of the guys there. And I'm just like, oh my God, what the fuck?
The gender politics are really bad, I would say. The rapiness, like other than there's basically like the Bluto character with the flounder character, he's basically just like touching women's breasts like when he meets them. But otherwise, there wasn't. I'm trying to think. Was there like anyone?
It's like the way they
towards
joke.
the end, there's definitely like a hey, you get naked. Like
It's the way they joke and like the vibe with the way the male characters treat. That's it. That's all I'm saying.
No,
I just like.
yeah.
So what I'm saying is that like I didn't really enjoy the movie, but it was interesting for me to like, just as a, I don't know, a piece of sociology or something like, because these types of comedies don't really exist anymore. Because then I started thinking about modern comedies, right? And like. One of the goofiest modern comedies I could think of is Step Brothers. But even in Step Brothers, there's like...
It's like 12 years old now, isn't it?
Well, sure. Okay, fine. But here's my... But I say Step Brothers because Step Brothers is like one of the most over-the-top, quote-unquote, like modern comedies, right? But even there's like a heart to it. There is a human story in that, even as silly as it is, that has... If there's a character arc and like people overcome things and there's emotional moments in that movie... even though it's goofy, whereas like this is a different kind of comedy where they're not even trying to do that. And I don't know how to really put that into words, but that was kind of thing that struck me as really interesting is like, this is slide whistle comedy. It's like, it's like
100%.
one-liners and pratfalls and like sight gags And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's interesting because like they don't really make movies like this anymore, and that was kind of the, I don't know, the thing that caught my eye the most.
Do you think they
Yeah.
don't, or like they're just not in theaters anymore? Like I got because National Lampoon is still, like, to Casey's point, they're still putting out these
But
movies.
I would wager though that even if you tried to make a movie like this, you would still add in those more human elements only because of the way modern audience expectations.
I mean,
Yeah,
even
you-
Van Wilder, he became.
I was what I was gonna say.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's an arc.
You'd have to set it up as like a throwback, and then still have like some sort of redemption towards the end. Like, yeah.
There is stuff that I like. There's like, you know, there's some moments that kind of like hit me right in this movie. So I wish I knew this actress's name. Maybe somebody knows, but this older woman who's well known to the world as Mama Fratelli from the Goonies. She was in Don't Throw Mama from the Train, right? Wasn't that her?
Yeah. She
It
plays
was
Mama.
It was throw Mama from the train. They were very pro.
Yeah, they wanted to
throwing
throw her.
Yeah. She did need to be thrown.
You know, she was a staple of like 80s character actors, and she could portray this certain thing with a look, right? Like overbearing mother kind of thing, nasty older lady. Like she just leaned into it and was so good at it. And there's this funny gag where she's like, this is so stupid, but for the reunion they called back the old lunch lady, like, oh, she came out of retirement for the night. And like in the beginning scene before the shit really goes down, she's serving everybody, and she's like just like bare handing Jello or something and throwing it on plates, and like she's describing the dishes,
slamming vodka and smoking the entire time.
Yes, smoking, and she's describing the dishes, and they sound absolutely disgusting. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's so nice to see you," and it's like it's literally nauseating watching her do this. But that might be the biggest laugh for the whole movie for me. Unfortunately, I think once they find out there's a killer, the movie kind of languishes because like. Then the whole second act is this very Scooby-Doo thing where the characters are just like running around, and there's a lot of just running around like without a lot happening. Yeah. That part kind of is a bummer, but the first act I was like kind of into.
Yeah. So like, this movie is definitely a nostalgia pick for me because I like it because of the nostalgia of it and being wrapped up in the National Lampoons. I could see the roots, like you're saying, it's a different kind of comedy, and I could see the roots of that comedy in here coming from. It's kind of National Lampoon's signature. So like the movie itself as a whole didn't age well, and it's pretty meh throughout. And when you look at it as a whole, it's got a ton of really funny set pieces that pop up throughout, and that's where the enjoyment comes in with seeing a lot of these actors that you've seen in other movies and stuff like that, and seeing these gags come out to play. Like there was a time after Stephen First Flounder character was getting grabby with the blind girl in the shop, and she stepped in a couple buckets and was trying to sneak around the school in buckets, finding anybody, and then they found herself on top of the saw table and walking across the wood shop on the tables as the other guy tried to keep up. That kind of stuff just cracked me up.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sequence. It's what's the guy's name? Gary Nash.
Yeah, the guy they keep forgetting his name.
Yeah. Like that sequence where she's walking across those tables and he's like helping make sure she doesn't fall. Really good. Like there are moments in this movie that I actually was like, these are solid. That was one where I was like, oh wow. So
I think to me, like it keeps going back to kind of the comment I made originally, is that Animal House is great because it's not like super on the nose. Like there's satire in college life, but they're just kind of doing it without like looking at the camera and winking. Whereas this one, I feel like they're
this
like,
movie's just jokes and jokes and jokes.
Oh, yeah,
hey,
definitely.
look at this, look what we're doing. And like, but to your guys' point, like in those moments like that, in sort of the woodshop scene, like where it's just straight up comedy and not like trying too hard, like it does land really well, and there are like those little like shining moments. So I
gotta
agree
say,
with you.
I do have to say, there's this guy who supposedly escaped from a mental institution. They had humiliated him, and we saw the flashback. And then we find out he's the one who's there, theoretically, whatever.
The setup,
well, it's actually
when they finally did the reveal.
I mean,
like,
the reveal is
Jesus
funny,
Christ.
but the setup's actual slashery, right? I mean, that's the plot of like Slaughter High, basically.
Yeah.
That's when you get into horror territory.
But like
obviously.
the actor that played him, I hated this guy. He is so
Anthony
obnoxious.
Kiedis' dad.
Joe,
Yeah,
Well, yeah. I mean,
Joe, he gave me
he
such.
birthed the Red Hot Chili Peppers, so
Yeah.
that's enough to fucking hate his guts to begin with.
Joe, but you talk about how your hatred of overzealous drama students. That's
Yeah.
the full vibe I got from this guy. Like this guy is like an experimental actor somewhere right now doing like an art installation where he sleeps in a glass box or something. Like
Well,
I just.
God willing, he's in prison for fucking birthing a Red Hot Chili Pepper.
But he's like, actually, Joe. It's funny, Joe, because you and I know are both huge behind the music aficionados, and I seem to remember like Anthony Kiedis telling stories about his dad getting him involved with like drugs and alcohol at like a way too young age.
Well, his dad had his name legally changed to Blackie Dammit, so there's obviously some questionable things going on there parenting wise.
You know, it's an interesting. You know, it's an interesting movie when literally you see one of the actors' names and you're like, is that offensive? But
did you legally become racist?
but like, so him I didn't like, but the other guy is, and I sort of have a love-hate relationship with this, but the main yuppie character, I describe as his voice is what I picture in my head for the last 12 years doing the John Schnarr's like college character. Like it's like this snooty 80s yuppie, like I shut down your ski lodge kind of voice.
Yeah.
But it is so put so put on. It is so so stagey that like it wasn't funny, but then it almost maybe comes around. I don't know. It's like it's a lot.
That leads to my other favorite trivia dump for this movie. That character, the yuppie that you're talking about, you know who he was? That was Bud the Chud.
Okay, so I've never seen Bud the Chud, but I definitely recognized him as a character actor.
Yeah, he was Bud the Chud in Chud 2.
I feel like he played an angry principal or father or something in something that I've seen.
Oh, he's been in a ton of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, he's been in. I mean, he was Child's Play 2.
Okay, that's you probably nailed it, John.
He's been kind of all over. I'm just going down his IMDb. I mean, that's where again this movie. It's like it's going through some of the motions, and again, I come back to the idea that this is John Hughes' first film. You see the joke, the like instinct toward jokes, and like the setup around some of these jokes. They just don't work. Like they're so underdeveloped and underbaked.
Well, he's gone on record as saying like he is not proud of this. Like,
well, I mean, the thing that's unclear to me is like during this period, were they actively like developing movies, or is this one of those presents kind of things? Like that was kind of the info that I wanted to suss out.
Reading quickly, and maybe Casey probably knows more. Like they were trying to make something. Like Animal House was such a huge hit
that they were trying to.
They just like were almost paralyzed by how successful that was, and they were trying to make something for a while, and then they just kind of landed on this.
Exactly, and if you look at this in like National Lampoon's history, this is after Animal House, where when Doug Kenny decided to split off, start making movies and stuff from the actual magazine at Harvard, people thought it was kind of going to be risky and goofy anyways. Animal House was a huge hit. Now all of a sudden everybody that they know Doug Kenny trying to run this film studio thing, and they're looking at it, it's like, what are you going to follow that up with?
Right.
So there's a hell of a lot of pressure.
Right. So when we think of the legacy of like Chevy Chase movies and like all this stuff, like this was really where they were like, oh shit, we have to do something.
Yeah.
That was what was almost weird to me. So again, knowing very little about this movie coming in, but knowing that it's a National Lampoon's movie, knowing the rough, it's in early 80s, there's very few, other than the guy that Eric's mentioned, his name's Garrett Graham. There's very few people I even recognize. Like, I don't think any of the talent here really ended up with much, like, longer of a career, versus... You watch an Animal House, you watch some of these other early National Lampoons.
That was like career launching.
They had an ability to pull people in.
Yes.
They recognized talent. They had access to talent. I don't know. So that was a little surprising to me.
The other side to that, though, is you'll also notice, though, that a lot of the people in this movie are National Lampoon's regulars. So they're kind of coming out of the regular state.
As like bit players, like not, but they're carrying this movie.
Yeah, but you'll see, like I said earlier, Cousin Eddie's wife in Christmas Vacation was Bunny in this movie, so you see her show up a lot. There's another gal, and I can't think of her name for the life of me, that was up on stage later on in Class Reunion that was one of the sorority gals from Animal House, stuff like that. You see Stephen First coming back.
It's funny, like one of my things with this movie is like the expression of sexuality in this movie is off-putting. Like everybody is so aggressively horny. And the example I'll use
Next level horny.
is there's two characters who their storyline is that they like used to date and now they've reconnected at their reunion and like they cannot stop from pawing at each other. And there's a scene in
I
this
actually really I love that one.
there's this scene in particular
Yeah.
where they're at a table. This is right after they reconnected. And they're at a table with another couple, and the guy just
Oh,
can't.
no, that was their spouses.
Oh,
it
I
was
totally
each
didn't
of
catch
their
that. Holy shit!
spouses.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the guy gets under the table and starts like eating her leg. Like it's not even like he's like making out. It's like he's trying to bite her leg, and it's like the weirdest scene to me. And then she gets under the table, and then they're gross making out. And it's like, and then they have this really weird, like. Mating ritual on the stage later that is for some reason completely lit up for the school play or whatever. The other,
Even though the rest of the place is a fucking dump, like the school,
yeah,
it makes no sense.
I mean the
It's
other
like they locked the doors after commencement in 1972 and reopened them for the reunion.
the other interesting kind of like cultural archaeology of this thing is just the concept of a class reunion. Like I don't know about you guys, but there was like an informal 10-year reunion for my school, but that's it. Or no, 5-year.
Yeah.
And then, but I don't know that there's ever been another formal one. It's like, I feel like it used to be you would graduate and go do your thing. And unless you stayed in town, like you didn't really know anything about where anybody went. And so it was interesting. You go and catch up. But now it's like, I'm Facebook friends with 75% of these assholes and I know what they're doing. I don't care.
And
So
I don't want to see them. Yeah.
And I feel like people probably move away maybe more too. I don't know. It's like I just feel like it's kind of a relic of the past in some ways.
My class had their 21 years after we graduate because they couldn't get their shit together, and I saw it, and it was just like a bunch of fuck faces I didn't want to see to begin with.
Well, I remember there was one year where like there wasn't going to be one, and somebody took it upon themselves and just did a little.
Yeah,
like-
yeah. I don't think they're organized by like schools anymore. I don't know. Like I remember
Oh no.
years ago I went to like my father's like 50th or whatever, and like I get that, like that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, like hey, you're still alive, bro. Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, no, I was gonna say my parents are class of '72, which is funny because that's the class that this movie, you know, the people in this movie are supposed to be, and like they still do reunions for their high school. So like
on a
definitely
scale of
have-
1 to
but-
10 though, like how horny are your parents, John? Like
Were
like
they?
that
Wait a
is-
minute. Were
I
they?
mean, what would I like to believe and what are they really are
Give
different
us-
things. But
Give us the in between, and then we'll figure out the.
no, but the thing that I was going to say about the reunion piece, that part wasn't that weird to me. Like we did a 10-year for my class that was not huge, but like it was, I don't know, whatever.
No, I mean,
Did you
I just find the whole concept interesting.
I had to organize it, Joe. I was the organizer.
Oh, you nerd.
fucking nerd.
No, the thing I was going to say is they're supposed to be 28 in this movie. All of the characters looked like they were
Oh, like
40 years
Oh,
old,
yeah.
straight up 40. Yeah, no,
I was looking
100%.
at these guys like, I'm in my late 30s and they are not young.
No, it's funny because I heard
They're
somebody
like
at some
a
point.
70s 20, which I think was like, you know, living hard.
What is this?
Yeah.
What is this supposed to be? You said 10-year?
It's their 10-year.
so it's
Yeah, so I was
basically-
thinking like these people are 28 or 30 or something. Yeah, I had the same exact. And then I was like, right after they mentioned that, they're kind of like, I think they're all in a group and they're kind of panning across the group, and I'm like, these people look so old.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
so-
been to my 20-year reunion, and it wasn't quite as wild as this one, and it was pretty lame altogether. But I mean, it was nice seeing some people.
I
that-
remember my father, like I went to one of my father's reunions when I was a kid, and it was a huge thing, like at this field, like you know, like a park kind of thing, and they had a softball game, and everybody's families were there. It was like a huge like operation. It's pretty wild.
Nice. See, I'm at that weird cutoff compared to you guys because my class is there's still like half of them that never embraced technology or the internet, and then half that did. So you can't get away with just Facebook to
Yeah,
get the same effect.
sure.
Yeah. I
Um,
don't need to connect with my like high school friends that.
yeah, I don't
fucking-
really. I mean, my actual friends I still talk to. The rest of them, it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Exactly.
Do we want to talk about the stoners who look like they've never seen weed in their entire lives?
Yeah.
See, I disagreed with your assessment of these stoners.
No, I'm with you, Eric.
No,
Like,
they're
those guys
acting-
were
they're-
just like alcoholics.
First of all, John, you're a narc, so I don't trust your opinion on anything weed related. Second of all, they act like they're drunk the whole movie. That's not what weed does to you.
No.
They're
I
like
totally
they're
agree.
like
They were
stumbling
basically, like,
around.
Yeah, they were basically just like ambiguous drug users. They
Sure.
weren't really stoners. I
It's
just
so
appreciated it.
it's
Again,
so
on the level
stupid.
of like 80s sex comedy stoners, it is weird because you would think John Hughes or whatever, like these guys like kind of knew what this should have looked like. And
Yeah.
other than the fact that one of them was a black guy and one of them was a white guy, he's the only black guy in the film, I think,
yeah,
other than
only,
Chuck Berry.
God, the only black guy and like the way he's portrayed, it's like not great.
Besides, it was National Lampoons in the 80s, and they were all on drugs.
They-
They knew what
Well,
stoners
that's
looked
what
like.
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. They do this effect that I like, and they do it in a stoner scene. There's another scene that's really funny where they do like a sped up frame rate thing. So they do it with the stoners after they find a dead body, and then they cut to like they've got some hidey hole in the basement or something where they get high, and then it immediately cuts to them, and the film sped up, so it looks like they're just smoking like 100 miles an hour because they're freaking out. But they do it again during Mama Fratelli's death scene because there's literally like an action sequence where she like does a barrel roll over a table and she's
Yes.
doing like karate moves, but I don't know if they did it for the comedy effect speeding it up or if it was just that she couldn't move fast enough to do the
No, I
stunts.
assume
It had to be a
It was
comedy.
both, actually.
But
That was
her
my
like
assumption.
her little like karate moves as she's backing out of the room was one of the weirdest things I think I've ever seen.
Well, it was pretty obvious they filmed a lot of that in reverse too.
Oh yeah,
Like,
that's possible.
roll.
Yeah, her literal. I can't believe they had her roll over that table. Even in '83, she looked like she
Yeah.
was like on death's
That's
doorstep.
That's Anne Ramsey for you, though. She was a badass.
Yeah, man, it's crazy.
Oh,
is probably-
Chuck Berry's in this too, huh?
Yeah.
Like her and
That might be the weirdest part of this movie. He gets like a featuring credit, or like some weird. He's like in the credits of the film, and then it's just like he plays 2 full songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like 3 or something, right? Like,
Almost, yeah.
Joe.
It's
You
very
had
strange.
beef with the song selection. Is that right?
well, I don't know. I mean, so My Dingling, I think, is one of his more popular songs, obviously. But like the first one, I forget what it was, but like, I don't know. You got Chuck Berry, like maybe throw in some of his classics, not this bullshit. Although, I mean,
Yeah.
the guy's like a convicted sex offender too, so like, who cares what they did with him?
Come on, why you gotta go after Chuck Berry like that? But
He is, John.
is he a convicted sex offender? I actually
Yeah,
don't know.
Yes.
I like how John in 2020 confidently says that without having the background information. You can't say that without knowing.
Yeah.
No, look, I haven't done my Chuck.
John's
Berry.
like, I don't know. He seems like a good guy to me.
no, he was not a good guy. He put out some hits, but fuck that guy.
Question, since I know nothing about him, is he alive?
No, he's very much dead.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other bits you guys want to bring up before we wrap here? I did like the joke about so stupid. The whole prank was that they okay. Oh, we didn't even talk. Did you mention this?
We
so
really didn't get into the plot. I
so
mean, I don't know if
the
it's
No, we
prank
didn't.
the
I don't
prank
think we
that
need
the
to.
prank that opens the movie that sets the whole plot into motion is that he's the loser. I mean, literally any number of 80 slasher movies follow the same plot, but they trick him to, oh, this girl wants to like hook up with you, and so he goes. And they're like, but you got to put this bag over your head. I don't even remember what the rationale was, but
because she was also
Shy or something.
like they were both shy or something.
So he does it. He goes and he's getting an HJ in the car, and then suddenly all the lights flip on, and the whole class is like circled around looking at him, and they're like, "It's really your twin sister." And then they cut, and it's just this. It's the same actor in drag giving
Yeah.
himself a handy.
But they don't reveal that. Like that reveal was actually gave me a
Yeah.
chuckle
Stupid.
because they don't show you exactly what it is.
But then at the end, they're
Um,
like, so the end, like the quote unquote investigator guy's like, aren't you the one that he always wanted to be with? And he thought it was you in that car. And she's like, it couldn't have been me. I don't even do that to my boyfriends because I don't want my forearms to get bulky. Honestly, other than the Mama Fratelli Jello slinging, that was probably the thing that made me laugh like the loudest. Cause like, and it's like
No, like
the funny thing is, there's a million jokes of that same exact vein in the movie, And I think any given person watching it, a different one's going to get you. But for whatever reason at that moment, that's the one that got me.
This movie has one of the highest density of hand job jokes of any movie I've ever seen. There's a ton of hand job jokes. It's crazy.
I will say I did laugh when the principal like deadpan says like Walter thought this woman was gonna be the girl who would diddle him or something. Like,
Yeah. But he says it like it's a clinical, like a
yeah.
research
Yeah.
term or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe you thought this was the woman that was going to diddle you.
Aside from the blind girl stomping around in the wood shop in her buckets, of which I really enjoyed. I really liked the
Oh my
Satanist
God.
that showed up in this, and the gag was super stupid, super simple. But when they first introduced her talking about joining the cult, and Bunny was there trying to light her cigarette, she's like, "Let me get that for you."
See,
And lights
but-
her thumb up.
That, like
My-
as a kid, like that is the reason my brother and I watched this. Like we quoted that character.
Oh, yeah.
But my least favorite part is the thrown in horror shit. It's like the possessed woman's probably the worst thing in the movie, and also the stupid vampire bullshit. You could have kept
Oh,
the
so
same.
weird.
No, you could have kept the same plot, just with people
It
dying.
makes no sense.
Like,
The
he-
vampire has no reason whatsoever to be there.
Like keep
it's
this.
just like a vampire that went to their school.
But like he doesn't even have like the teeth or anything. Like,
No,
it's
he does.
just an accident.
I
Doesn't
know.
he? Like
That's
man,
the
it
Yeah,
just-
he
that's the
does.
point
That
scene.
stuff really bothered me because it just feels lazy. Like you already have the horror spoof or the horror comedy plot. Like people are getting murdered. You don't need the possessed lady. And part of it is that I think I just hate this actress's performance in this role because it's just so stupid. But again, like
I go
there's
back and forth between
if-
she was brilliant and she was completely
and I get that
crazy.
the fact that they don't explain it is intentional. It's just part of the madcap hilarity, John. But that part really bugged me. I don't know.
I
Yeah.
love that her whole angle into Satanism was talking with her voice loud and
It's so
making
stupid,
big
yeah.
eyes.
Well, then she does the like breathing fire bit, like
Yes.
much further along in the film. I mean, the whole thing was fucking crazy. Yeah. She's
Alright.
apparently in Spinal Tap. I'm gonna have to.
Oh, no
I
shit.
mean, that's like one of my
Nice.
all-time favorites. I'll have to watch that and see.
All right,
I gotta
guys.
see
if I can find her.
National Lampoon's Class Reunion. Would you recommend it, John?
I'm gonna say no.
Joe?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Casey, but no.
Casey?
I'm going to say you're all wrong. I say yes.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're into stuff like Troma's Squeeze Play or Sizzle Beach USA, in which case you've probably already seen this, but maybe. But I'm gonna also say no.
Or if you're old and into dad jokes like I am.
Should we say I took John on a journey today of the Troma-produced sex comedies and discovered that they released a box set called The Sexy Box.
Yes, you should have led with that.
There you go. All right, guys, let's do it. Let's do some fan mail.
Brain scan.
It's interactive, dude. You're in the game.
Intense.
Hello, Michael.
Insane. Interactive.
Never leave home without it.
And totally out of control. Brain scan.
Game over. You lose.
Rated R. At theaters now.
Hi there, I'm Judith O'Day from George Romero's original Night of the Living Dead, and you're listening to Bloody Good Horror.
Send feedback to info@bloodygoodhorror.com or on Twitter using hashtag AskBGH. Join Patreon to get back episodes and much more. Patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror.
And we're back. So, there's this thing in Animal Crossing, John,
Ugh.
where on Sunday mornings, an animal comes to your island and sells turnips. And
Yes.
every week the price is different, right? So you buy turnips, you buy as many as you want, and it's like a it's basically the stock market. I think we described this last week. And by the end of the week, you have to sell them back or you lose all your money. So every day, twice a day, you check your store, the price changes. Sometimes you get really high, sometimes you get really low. It's possible to get screwed. So we're all on Slack. We're like coordinating, to like try to get the best price because you can visit people's islands. So I happened to wake up at like 5:30 this morning, and because my dog woke me up, so I get up and I'm like in the living room playing Animal Crossing, and I happen to hop on Slack, and I see that Andy, our patron from Australia, his shop was selling them for 495 bells, John. I only paid eight.
Wait,
I only paid
no, it wasn't Andy, right? It was what's his name?
Oh, I'm sorry, it was Jared in Korea.
Jared, there you go.
So I almost like forgetting what time it was. I almost texted Joe at 5:30 in the morning because I knew he was in deep.
He would be awake.
Yeah, I was up like 15 minutes up. Well, the problem is your 5:30 in the morning is my 4:30.
Oh shit, that's right. I didn't even think about that.
But I also have my do not disturb on, so like never like feel free to
all right,
text
I will.
me like yeah.
So Joe's for this week anyway. Joe's turnip saga has ended positively.
Oh, amazing! Like I literally, as soon as I saw your message, I hopped on there to see if Jared and I got in there in time. I had like a 300% profit. Very great stuff.
I'm the opposite now, where I bought light and could have made a shitload of money. This is what happens, John. This is how people lose all their money in the stock market. I'm all excited now. I'm ready to go all in.
Oh yeah, next week's gonna be a disaster.
God, I just I'm gonna check in every week, and I really would like to start talking really stock market advice. Let's move this out of Animal Crossing. Just get into.
I mean, God, like we talked about this a little before the show. Like, I also have an 8-year-old who's playing this game, and like, so I have stressed about this, like the turnips for weeks, and like like Eric has seen me on Slack, just like constantly, like literally. First thing in the morning, I'm like on Slack asking everyone what their prices are. At like 12:01 on the dot, when they switch, I'm asking. I talked to my daughter tonight, and I'm like, "Did you buy any turnips?" She's like, "Yeah, I ate them." I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, oh well, I have a friend who listens to the show. Like his were selling for like $400, so like I made like a lot of money. And she just looks at me deadpans like, I got stung by a wasp.
Didn't you also block off one of your rooms with your turnips to keep her from
we
it?
talked about this last week, like, because you can't put them in storage, so you have to keep them in your house. So like, I literally like have a sofa that I put in front of the room where I keep my turnips to like keep her out.
On Sunday, Joe posted that picture of him pushing the sofa back in front of the doorway, which I thought was
because it's like I know when she plays, because like now I'm like trying to move all my cherry trees into one area and like clean things up. And then when she plays, like I'll go back on and like there'll just be like a shirt lying in the middle of a field. It's like, well, I don't need this anymore, so I'm done. Like,
I'll tell you what, Joe. This dumb game is literally the only thing keeping me sane right now. So thank the Lord.
But I kind of love her like innocence of the whole thing.
Oh,
She's like, she just goes around and talks to people, and like literally, we've been playing this for maybe about a month and a half. And the other day, I'm like, yeah, you just need like a ladder to get up here. She's like, oh yeah, I never built one. And I'm like, you're missing like half of the fucking island. Like, what are you doing? She's like, yeah, I don't do that. And I'm like, I put all our cherry trees over here. And she's like, yeah, I'm not walking all the way over there. Like, I just buy cherries, like if I want them. I'm like, what the fuck?
I fucking love it. All right, Joe. 5K.
Yeah, buddy. 5K is coming up. We're just about like a week and a half away. May 15th through the 17th. That's a Friday through a Sunday. So we're doing it the same way we've always done the 5K, which we'll be doing again in October, and that'll be like our full-blown one. But this is really our social distancing 5K. So we're not doing medals, we're not shipping out prizes or anything. We'll figure out something for the folks that have the fastest time. But really, it's just a chance for you to get out there and run, walk, do whatever you got to do. The 5K, use the hashtag BGH5K and post it up. And like, we're really just seeing this as like a fun opportunity for like some sort of like social gathering on our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you're out there. If you're in our Slack group, post up your pictures there, and we'll get them out there. Like, we really just kind of want to build a community and have something fun to do. So if you're worried about your time, or like, I know my running has not been nearly as consistent as it used to be, like, don't feel like you have to do this, as quick as possible or anything. Like, it's really just about having a good time. So whatever you can do. And again, that's May 15th through the 17th, Friday through Sunday.
Love it.
Hmm?
All right, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, buddy.
I'm ready. I'm not, but I'm kind of ready.
Yeah. What are you ready for?
The 5K. Info at
Oh.
bloodygoodhorror.com. First up, Kyle. I thought Joe might be interested in learning about the unfortunate recent death of Dmitry Dyachenko, probably better known to the crew as Yuri. He appeared in both the Chernobyl Diaries and They're Watching. He died on April 21st at the age of 52 in a freak electroshock accident in Daytona Beach, Florida. Thought Joe might want to raise a glass of vodka for his old comrade.
Oh,
yeah. Honestly, there's no way that guy dies quietly. Like, he definitely dies in something like a freak electroshock accident. You know what I mean? Like, he's not living a natural causes kind of life, I guess is what I'm saying.
That hits home. And to know he was living in Daytona also, like, upsets me on a different level.
I know, and now we'll never know if that bear was real or not.
Yeah, well,
he's the only guy who could tell us.
I hope that bear died with him and they buried each other together.
Yeah. Next up, John, we had Caitlin from Kissimmee wrote in and wanted to, she was asking so here, she asked, she thought you were Andy. She thought you ran the theater that she referred to as the Asian theater, which actually it's called like what is it called? Oriental. The Oriental is the name of it. It's in Milwaukee, a lovely classic theater that we screened Reanimator in a few years ago. I asked Andy to send an email. Andy, I love you, buddy. This email is way too long, and I'm half buzzed, so I can't really make heads or tails of it. But John, while I skim it, you want to give me your thoughts on this whole kerfluffle here? This all started around theaters or distributors starting to put out movies digitally.
Well, yeah. All right. So this is like a long simmering battle where theaters' whole business is based around the fact that they have access to content that people can't see anywhere else but by paying to come see it in the theater, at a very high level. And so as digital technology's improved, this goes all the way back to like the first time you could rent shit in your house with like a fucking special cable box. Like, the whole concept was that if studios or distributors were ever going to try to bypass or otherwise like do an end run around theaters, the theater's reaction was going to be to ban stuff. And that is like more or less kept the current state of affairs for, 20 plus years. Basically when, so the question all comes down, this recent incident all comes down to the coronavirus situation. All the theaters are shut down. All these these studios are sitting on film content that, in some cases, like they're just making all kinds of weird decisions, right? So like the Fast and the Furious movie, whatever it is, Fast 9 or whatever we're on now, is bumped like a year. Some of the other major films are bumped later in the year. They're pushing to next year. Universal has made essentially the opposite sort of play. And what initially happened was that they released a couple movies that had been put in theaters very quickly after. So typically there's a window. I don't know exactly I'm sure it's negotiated on a movie by movie basis, but it's usually something like 10 weeks that the theaters have to sell something. And then it's going to go to, pay-per-view or on demand. It was Invisible Man was probably the biggest film that it came out like 3 weeks before coronavirus. And so a bunch of people saw it and it did really well in theaters, a big spike. And then it actually also did really well once it was released, on demand. And what that did is it emboldened Universal to kind of say, okay, well, we have a couple other big movies coming in the spring. Let's see what happens. And so the big one was Trolls. Trolls World Tour, the sequel to the amazing Trolls original film.
That movie's wild. The sequel's wild. There's a lot going on.
I loved it. I love the first Trolls movie. Yeah. I love the second Trolls movie. My kids love them, which is more important than me loving them. No, and the movie, there's been look, the thing that's been a little annoying is there's been a lot of breathless headlines about Universal has changed movie production or releasing forever and yada. It's like, no, that's probably not true. If the coronavirus hadn't happened, this wouldn't have happened. Like, like we had been dancing around this forever, but there was always going to be sort of this slow walk toward some version of some films being released to, streaming, some going to theaters, maybe a blend in the middle. And that's all gotten blown up. And so basically AMC has come out and said they're never going to screen another Universal film, which, like, I don't know, like, I like AMC. The main theater I go to is an AMC theater, but like, they're being jerk offs. Like, they need to chill out a little bit.
Yeah, I get the vibe. I get a vibe like, when DirecTV contracts go up and everybody gets into a pissing match with each other.
Well, despite the good and bad of it, of the contract details and stuff like that, even like in a time that we're going through right now with the quarantine and stuff, it's kind of hard to be the company that goes against somebody else trying to entertain people at home. So you have that added argument in there as well. I'm not saying either one of them are good or bad because of that, but that adds to the argument. It's
a super complex and complicated situation, and like, to a certain extent, I like feel for the theater companies, and I would say more I feel for independent theater owners. At the end of the day, like, this was a shrinking, or it was a business that was getting smaller over time. They had done some interesting stuff, and I think they're just challenged now to say, like, what is the reason to go to, spend. Let's say I was going to take my wife and 2 of my 3 children to the theater, because I would always leave the baby at home. Forget it, she's too young. I'm not wasting the money.
Who's watching the baby, Joe?
No, she's fending for herself in this theoretical.
Those are details.
But 4 people in New York City, and again, New York's fucking expensive, I get it. But like even outside of New York, like, I'm in Maryland now, $12 a ticket. I'm gonna spend $50 just to get everyone into the theater. Then I gotta buy my kids like $20 worth of concessions. Like, that's fucking crazy. In a universe where I can rent this movie for $20, Universal does basically just as well as me buying 4 tickets. And I haven't done the exact math, but I don't know. So it was always going to happen. The theaters need to find a way to kind of like justify their existence that isn't just like charging really, really high prices for these tickets. And
sure.
like, I don't know.
I mean, look,
we'll
like,
see.
I love the AMC dining theaters, but not everyone. That's not not everybody has those around them. It's not the experience everybody's having.
Yeah, and look, I love going to the movies. Just to be clear, like, I want there to be movie theaters. Like, I don't want people to hear this and be like, "Schnars is whatever." No, I will support theaters.
Oh, people are posting right now, John, about your opinions.
No, but I take it like, I don't know. It's just like, they gotta fucking get this figured out, because like, not everybody can afford to go to the movies. Not everybody can afford to take their kids to the movies.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. So
well, it's the same thing with like the music industry, right? And it's amazing that it's taken this long for like film industry to kind of catch up and like this bubble to like potentially burst.
Right. It almost forced an inevitability.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy because like we feel like we've been joking about movie ticket prices being insane for like 20 years at this point, like, and now there's something that's like legitimately threatening it, and they're gonna have to figure fucking shit out, or MP3s are gonna take over the world, John.
Oh God, MP3s. 12 songs from the same album, all named wrong, different volumes.
Yeah. All of them that infected my computer.
Right, there's a virus in there somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is like a topic I very much enjoyed discussing and talking about, so I appreciate the question. I worry no one wants to hear from me anymore on it, so.
Yeah, I heard half of it.
No, John, we can confirm that. Nobody wants to.
I don't know. I think it's going to be an interesting time, because we talked about this before in the past too, how things have changed, like since when I was a kid and getting into movies and you couldn't find anything, you had to hunt for stuff. Then you got digital cable and you had full-blown plot synopses and stuff, and it changed then, being a kind of a movie geek or enjoying movies and that. And then
I tried to
the internet
explain...
happened and everything's ultimately instantly accessible, so it's weird. The whole thing's evolving.
I tried to explain VHS to my 4-year-old daughter this morning, and she didn't care.
Yeah,
not at all.
We I mean, really quick on Casey's point, like, I actually think one avenue forward, and this is where like Andy, who does help run an independent theater, would be really interesting to talk to. But screening, like, so we will get to a point where there are movies that are like you won't be able to see them in a theater other than for special events. And I do think there's a universe where even something like The Irishman, which Netflix put out, and they actually did do a limited theatrical run for, you know, being able to see that in the theater might actually become like something you would pay $20 for versus like just rando fucking Friday night.
The thing
release,
that I
you
was
know?
thinking recently about The Irishman though is like,
That's a bad example because
no, but just kind of sort of unrelated, but kind of related. Like, you can't get that in physical format, right?
No.
Like, that's crazy. Like, what happens when Netflix is like gone?
You know.
But do you think that should keep it from being like nominated for awards and stuff though?
No.
No. Well, yeah, that's a whole
nother argument.
No, but it's just interesting to me. Like, that's a friggin' Martin Scorsese film that you can't own physically.
Yeah, you cannot physically buy it. Yeah.
Are you sure? Like, I feel like, and I only know this because I think my library was like at some point you would be able to rent it from them.
I don't know.
It's not unheard of for some of those that come out streaming early to come out with a physical release later.
Yeah.
It's just like back in the day when VHS would come out and
Yeah,
then
but-
it had like a retail date that was later on, so it was more expensive.
Yeah, but
until
this
it
is
came out.
but this is a Netflix thing, and physical copies are very against the Netflix ethos.
Yeah. No, I
think you're right. Like, I'm checking on Amazon, and it doesn't seem like there is like a DVD version of it.
No,
I figured if nothing else, Jeff Bezos liked to make money, so you'd think he'd take every opportunity.
Well, and Netflix might be doing something where they're making it available in libraries or something, but yeah, I'd be surprised. So, yeah. But
that's all for fan mail. If you want to do Twitter.
Sure, man. We can do Twitters. We're on Twitter at BG Horror. Every week we post up questions, and you can use the hashtag AskBGH. I'm borderline slurring at this point, so it's going to be good. First up from Hunter Shea 1. It's our buddy Hunter Shea. Remember the time when John said Eric was triggered by The Hunt? And round 2.
I do. He's not. Yeah. I mean, I'm triggered by things that aren't funny.
Yeah.
And think they are.
I still think triggering means something different. Next up, this is a poignant question, one I feel strongly about. It's from our buddy Skizbot. Can any of you drive a car with a manual transmission? I fear that one day I'll be fleeing for my life. I'll hop in a car with a stick shift, and then I'll have to simply resign myself to my impending murder.
Do they even make?
They definitely do.
But you have to like special request it, right?
No, well, it depends on the type of car. Like, there's some. It's actually cheaper usually to get. At least it used to be like a manual transition. I don't know, Casey. I assume you can drive one.
I learned to drive on a manual. I drove a Jeep Wrangler that was a.
Casey, you're muted.
Yeah. What?
Me? Oh,
Casey's muted.
Am I muted? Yeah.
I learned to drive on one
Casey,
too. Casey, you're still muted.
You are muted, bro.
Oh, you meant me. I thought you meant stars.
My wife can.
Yes, I can drive a stick. Thank you.
My wife
so
can't.
Is it just you, Eric, on here? You're the only one who can't?
No, I can't. My wife can, though, so I'm fine.
So you and Skizbot dead in this situation.
Yeah. Why would I ever want to do that? Like, if you knew me at 16, John, it was the last fucking thing on earth I was ever going to do was try to learn that shit.
Oh,
serious
I love
question.
it. It's so
serious
fun.
question, Eric. Are you lefty?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh,
so
that's
because
tough.
I've tried teaching my wife Colleen how to drive a stick, and she's a lefty, and it just never made sense to her. So there's some data backing it up.
Yeah, I mean, also I was just lazy and didn't care, and was like, why would I do that when I can just do this? And
Yeah, that's a large factor too.
And then I'm driving, and that's it. I'm just driving. Why would I do the other thing?
I had 2 cars that were manual transmission, and like they're fun to drive when you're just like on a highway or something. But once I moved to New York and like was stuck in traffic for like hours at a time, like they're fucking miserable. And
I just don't think I just don't think they even
your calves get a little stronger.
Like, when was the last time you saw one that wasn't from the 90s or something? Like, I don't know.
Well, a lot of sports cars are like high performance.
I actually have a young
saying,
coworker who prides himself on his cheapskateness, and he's driving a manual Chevy Spark because he got it cheap.
Yeah.
Crazy.
There you go.
My
My
minivan
is automatic, just to be clear. So.
Yeah. I don't know. Out in the burbs, like I would drive one if I could get my hands on it.
It's stupid.
My wife cannot drive one, and I would not be
Yeah,
able to purchase
yeah,
one.
mine too. Next up from John's favorite buddy, that's CO_W Flanagan, hoagie lover. Yo, I'm a essentials worker. How do I combat my jealousy over all y'all sitting at home in your pajamas eating gelato while I protect America's ample bosom?
I mean, you can pay your bills.
I'm home with two
Right?
kids. I'm home with two kids under 4, so it's not.
Yeah.
What you just described is not my experience.
I salute him and his bosom protection.
Yes.
is what
Yeah,
I say.
absolutely. I would say.
Yeah, of course, but
Also, is he telling the truth? Who can say?
No, I 100% doubt it. But, yeah.
Listen,
I don't know. Those prisoners got to have somebody watching them, right?
It's
Yeah.
true.
All I could say is, just take pride in the fact that you're doing the Lord's work and you're better than all of us. But you're probably not. All right. Next up from our buddy Daniel Grams. I'm about to # get a daughter in a few hours. Should I cut the umbilical cord? Did any of you guys? Should I be tweeting right now? Probably not.
The unbiblical.
Come on. Is this fake? Is that real?
I don't think. No, I gotta imagine. Like, do you remember being in the hospital? Like, you had a lot of sitting around time, so
Listen,
I'm sure he just
do not. I don't want anything to do with any cutting, any blood, like in and out. I don't want to see any more than I have to.
So we had 3 C-sections, so I was not offered the opportunity to cut.
Yeah.
the
No.
So see, we had 2 C-sections, and the first one I was offered, and I'm like, sure. And then I go over, and they're like, it's already cut, and they're like, literally, you can just like cut a little more, and I'm like, well, what the fuck is this? Like, why am I doing this? And like,
No, we had.
by the way, my wife's guts are like right to my right, and I just saw those. So thanks for inviting
did
me
you
over.
really? No, I was
They
like, I
would
don't.
not let me stand
Yeah,
up.
no,
I wasn't
no,
allowed
thank
to
you.
get out of my chair.
Oh, I looked. I saw, John. I saw everything.
God.
So we had one of ours was like fully natural, and I saw that whole thing, and that was something.
Me too.
And you didn't cut the cord and then the natural?
No, I don't. Why do I want to? I don't want to do that. Are you fucking kidding
Yeah.
me? I'm not
So
psycho.
when the cord got cut, not by me, in one of I think it was the middle one, blood sprayed
Yeah,
like
what?
up onto the
No.
ceiling.
No, like Joe, did you eat the
I was like,
placenta then too?
Why is that? Why is that the natural progression?
I'm just saying. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't blood.
Childbirth, like God,
Weird
like
things.
God bless you, women. Like you
Yeah,
are
it's incredible.
a
It's
million times better than any of us. Like it is the most fucking frightening thing
It's
I've ever
beautiful.
witnessed.
It's a beautiful miracle, and it's also horrifying and disgusting.
Yeah.
all those
Next up
things.
from our buddy Whitney.
I say cut it, by the way, if you're given the option.
Yeah, if you get the chance, absolutely.
Yeah,
But if it is a C-section, don't bother. Like,
yeah,
'cause
just keep your head down.
it's just a ruse. Next up from our good friend Whitney Plus. Do you have a cousin Eddie in your life? If so, please tell us more. I've been informed by our good friends up in Milwaukee that I am the cousin Eddie in their life. So
we have some interesting family that none that are like cousin Eddie level.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I have a whole branch of the family that's cousin Eddie, if that counts.
Yeah. My stepbrother is full-blown cousin Eddie, and I'm not going to go into details just in case he does happen to
let me put it this way, and I wish Mark could back me up on this if he was here, but I have a whole branch of the family who the last wedding on that side that I went to, like 5 minutes after the ceremony, they couldn't handle being dressed up for like 4 hours for a wedding, so they all changed into what we jokingly refer to as their dress denims. And so like these are all like kind of gearhead like motorcycle-y people, and so like literally half of them changed into cut off jean jackets, like biker cut off jean jackets and like shorts at a wedding. So if that kind of gets you, orients you to what I'm talking about. It's great.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. That is cousin Eddie.
Yeah,
absolutely. Next up from our good friend Alyssa, that's Lycanthropology. What's your horror what's your horror wheelhouse? Like how Eric is always down for a found footage. Mine are werewolves and movies about ghosts.
definitely found footage. Definitely 80s slashers. It's my wheelhouse for sure.
I like ghost movies. Will always scare the shit out of me, no matter like how awful they are. Like they'll 9 times out of 10 they'll get me. Anybody
know.
else?
I don't know if I have a good answer to this one. I like the
Case?
kind of slow burny types sometimes.
Yeah. Casey, you got anything?
Nah, nothing in particular. I'm like John though. I do like a good slow burning sometimes.
There you go. All right, our buddy Cody Yolo. Would you wear a Michael Myers mask for 3 months straight for $500,000? Only take
Easy.
it off for an hour a day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, dude. That's like life-changing
Wait,
money.
hold on. You got to sleep in it or no?
Take it off for 3 hours a day. So yeah.
I
assume
don't
you
know
gotta
if I
sleep.
could. I don't know
I
if I
mean,
could sleep
you'd
in
probably die.
I sleep in a
Yeah.
CPAP mask. It's not like it's going to be that much different.
it. If I could do it and get a CPAP mask, I might do it.
I just pictured Casey with like the Michael Myers mask with the tube, like he
With
cut
the
a hole
hose
for
coming
the,
out of his mouth.
I mean, look, it's not wearing a mask on your goddamn face, but like when I had my shoulder surgery, I had to sleep with a fucking arm immobilizer on my back, inverted. I mean, like I've slept in bad situations. So you know what? I'm gonna change my answer and say yes, I would do it.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Last but not least, from Chris Aleonte. Favorite horror comedies where the balance between laughs and scares gets close to perfect. Little Monsters got real close, but what are some others?
Monster Squad. I liked Hell Baby a lot. That was a super funny movie.
I love Hell Baby.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say it's not scary at all.
No,
Like,
it's very
there's no
yeah. You're right.
balance.
You're right. It's very comedy. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
as a kid, especially like Monster Squad, and because I watched it not too long ago because it was on Shudder. Like that vampire is scary. Like
Oh yeah.
the Wolfman.
All the monsters. The Wolfman is terrifying.
Wolfman's
like-
goddamn terrifying in that movie.
Yeah.
And there's that great scene where like they're confronting them. Like there's a big confrontation at the end in kind of the town square, and the wind's blowing, and there's lightning, and
Yeah.
like, yeah. I actually think like as a kid anyway, I think Monster Squad's like kind of scary.
I feel like any of the like sort of black comedies from we've done a bunch of New Zealand ones. So Housebound comes to mind. Black Sheep is fucking hilarious and also just like kind of crazy. And then a bunch of the like British shit. Sightseers.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was
It's
good.
it's again they're not like comedy. They're not comedies the same way this movie's a comedy or something like Hell Baby, but they're legit kind of fucked up and then also really funny. So
I need to go back and watch Hell Baby. It didn't grab me the first time, but I love the state, which is where a lot of those people come from. So I need to
Just
give it a
then-
second chance.
there's multiple po' boy eating scenes that are
Oh,
Yeah,
the
I was
po'
gonna
boy,
say the two
yeah.
priests.
That shit was pretty good for sure.
pure
So-
gold.
That's it for our tweets, buddy.
All right, sounds great. Do we decide we're doing next week? I don't think we figured it out yet.
No, we haven't.
We're trying to find a video pick again because there's not a lot of movies coming out.
Eric, we have one last staff pick, saving the best for last.
Yeah.
as I like to say.
Do you remember what your last or any of your staff picks were?
Well, we did the Brood. I remember that.
Yes, I do. Remember that. I had never seen
That's
that.
like one of my all timers.
all I remember.
No,
All right.
we'll see.
Cool story. So we're gonna figure that out. I guess it's Schnarzy's staff pick over here. Don't forget, is the 5K this weekend, Joe?
Next weekend.
Next
Next
weekend.
weekend.
Okay. Yeah. And if you want to get in on the Animal Crossing talk, patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror. You too can torture Joe with your store prices every day.
Oof. It's a lot of stress.
All right, guys. That's going to do it for National Lampoon's Class Reunion. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you next week.
See you.
Goodbye, everybody. Now.
Bye-bye.